level of chaos from protests at universities across the country in decades. The national attention's also led to investigations in many cities and in Congress, where there are now new questions about the funding behind some of America's elite universities. Following the money trail this morning, CEO and founder of OpenTheBooks.com, Adam Andrzejewski. Happy Friday, Adam. Great to see you as always. Many of these schools that have experienced some level of violence, as we know, are Ivy League schools or they're private institutions. They are not state schools. So why should taxpayers be concerned?
Well, Jan, these private schools, they're organized as public educational charities underneath our tax laws, and therefore they must serve the public good. Because they're educational charities, they get significant and special tax advantages on their investments, and they're funded by the American taxpayer to a great degree. As a matter of fact, on federal contracts and grants, many of these private schools receive more government subsidy from the American taxpayer than what they collect on undergraduate student tuition. And so, look, I think the American people are rightly disturbed by what they've seen on their TV screens with an historic shift in favor of terrorism and hostage taking and human shields by an Iranian puppet against our closest ally in the Middle East, Israel. And so, look, if there's one principle that we can all agree on, is that one single dollar should be following a university that's coddling discrimination, bigotry, or anti-Semitism.
And it's not only taxpayer funding, Adam, but we're also hearing more and more about foreign gifts, foreign grants into these institutions. Can you follow the foreign dollars into America's higher education?
So our auditors at OpenTheBooks.com, we looked at the last 40 years worth of foreign gifts into America's colleges and universities. And Jan, it's $44 billion. Now, a couple of years ago, then Education Secretary Betsy DeVos, she forced these colleges and universities to simply follow federal law. They have to report on a federal database, which we downloaded and reorganized and gave oversight, their foreign gifts and grants. So many people a couple of years ago, and you'll remember this, they were concerned about Chinese influence on our campuses. For example, the Chinese had opened up about 100 Confucius Institutes. The Chinese had poured in over 40 years $2.8 billion into America's higher education system. When exposed, they retreated. They closed up a lot of those institutes. Well, here's what we found with just 4 Middle Eastern countries. That's Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Kuwait. They've poured in over the last 40 years, not $2.8 billion, but $10.3 billion. It's 4 times the dollars that the Chinese put in. We also took a look at Israel. They've put in $300 million. So for every dollar that Israelis have funded on American campuses, those 4 Middle Eastern countries have funded $33.
Wow, and you know, I just keep thinking about the number you said in the beginning, $44 billion. That's a lot of money. What do these foreign countries get for it? What are Middle Eastern countries like Qatar or Saudi Arabia, what are they funding?
So Qatar is actually, out of their $5.2 billion that they've put into America's colleges and universities, $5 billion of it has flowed to just 6 elite schools who have set up degree-conferring campuses back in Qatar in their education city. So it's schools like Georgetown and the Cornell Medical School. It's Northwestern and Texas A&M and VCU and Carnegie Mellon. Now, the Saudi Arabia does it differently. They do smaller grants, but they spread it around, 240 campuses. So oftentimes, they're actually buying seats of Saudis on our campuses. For instance, at Columbia University, over the course of the last 2 years, the Saudis have paid $5 million in tuition costs for seats at Columbia. At MIT, they actually funded $7 million for a new research center, and then they gave restricted grants for Saudi nationals to do research at Columbia. So if your child hasn't gotten into an elite school, maybe one of the reasons is the seats are actually occupied by foreign nationals, international students whose governments are paying the tuition.
A lot to discuss here. I have so many more questions. We're running out of time, though, so we'll have to revisit this again. CEO and founder of OpenTheBooks.com, Adam Andrzejewski. Always great to talk to you, sir. I hope you have a great weekend.
Thank you, Jan.